people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
To the mother relay, we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Newly crowned undisputed super lightweight champion Chantel Cameron posted this to his social media, and it reads, "Been a good 2 weeks off celebrating becoming undisputed champion, but ready to plan what's next. Who would you like to see me fight that has a world title?" That really narrows the field of options, really narrows down the pool, that last part. Who would we like to see Chantel Cameron fight at or around these weights that has a world title? I think the most obvious answer would be Katie Taylor. Katie campaigns at 135 pounds, and Chantel campaigns just north of 135 at 140. But Katie is spoken for. Not set to return to action until the second quarter of next year opposite the ring, Amanda Serrano, provided that Amanda makes it past Erica Cruz in their undisputed featherweight title fight. The short answer is Katie is spoken for. The only other fighter in possession of an alphabet title or alphabet titles, the only other champion at or around these weights is the woman that Chantel Cameron just beat, Jessica McCaskill, who still reigns as a champion north of 140 at 147. Though given how one-sided their fight was, I just don't see a point in a second fight. I don't see a point in a rematch. The only virtue is that it would allow Chantel Cameron to become a two-division champion. If she beats Jessica for the second time up there at 147, she in effect becomes a champion again, just at a different weight. But I don't think a second fight would go any different than the first fight did. 140, 147, I feel that Chantel has Jessica's number. Chantel Cameron, who's currently under orders by way of the WBO to satisfy her mandatory challenger, Christina Lenardatu. Two-time WBO champion Christina Lenardatu of Greece, former champion. It's been some weeks since that order came down, and here we have Chantel Cameron asking this question: who would you like to see me fight that has a world title? The inference you can make is that Chantel Cameron, at least in her own mind, she has bigger fish to fry. She ain't got no time for a Lenardatu. But the WBO haven't left Chantel with much of a choice. If she don't fight Christina, the title is forfeit. Is she willing to sacrifice, surrender that WBO title so soon after having won it? Is that what we're about to see? For my money, I'd rather see Chantel opposite the ring Christina than Chantel versus Jessica again. As stated, I don't think a second fight goes any differently than the first one did, and there's no demand for it. I think that was by far and wide Jessica McCaskill's worst performance. It's the worst I've ever seen her, but it's not because she's not a good fighter. She's a good fighter. She's a very good fighter. It's just that stylistically, I reiterate, Chantel's got a number. The fight was too one-sided to run it back straight away. If you're gonna run it back, if you're gonna do a second fight between Jessica and Chantel, at least let Jessica get back in the winner's bracket. Give her a rebound fight. I think they should. It just so happens that former IBF welterweight champion Ivana Habazin 5 days ago stated that she had just got news the IBF ordered negotiations between her and Jessica McCaskill. That's the story. That's the story according to the former champion Ivana Habazin. She's saying that she's Jessica's mandatory challenger by way of the IBF, but not just by way of the IBF. She's now claiming she's also her mandatory challenger by way of the WBC. According to Ivana, 5 days ago, the IBF ordered a fight between them. 5 days later, she's now saying the WBC did the same thing. She's saying WBC has officially ordered a fight between Jessica McCaskill and myself. What a great Christmas gift. 2022 was full of challenges, but with God's help, we made it. 2023 is going to be huge. One goal, all the belts. Is that possible? She's the dual mandatory for Jessica McCaskill. You don't often see dual mandatories. You don't often see two separate alphabet organizations ordering a champion to satisfy one particular fighter, one particular mandatory challenger. More often than not, that's not how it happens. But in the case of Ivana Habazin, that's what she's claiming. She's saying both the IBF and the WBC are ordering Jessica to fight her. Coincidentally, Ivana Habazin would be an ideal rebound fight for Jessica McCaskill, and I think she needs one.
She's beatable.
And if McCaskill versus Cameron 2 is a fight that they're willing to revisit, a second fight, a rematch for all of Jessica's belts the second time, well, I think you need to get Jessica back in the winner's bracket first.
The first fight was fought too lopsided. It was too one-sided for you to run it back straight away.
It wasn't like Taylor versus Serrano. It wasn't like Mayer versus Baumgartner. It really wasn't competitive.
McCaskill versus Habazin makes sense, but if Jessica does end up fighting Ivana next as opposed to Chantel, where does that leave Chantel?
Well, in a scenario like that, Chantel might become a little bit more receptive to a Leonardo 2 fight, a Christina Leonardo 2 mandated title defense, a fight that I think would be an all-action shootout, a fight that I think wouldn't disappoint.
The only drawback is that Christina Leonardo 2, great fighter that she is, dangerous, she ain't got much of a profile.
There's not much money in that fight for Chantel and not all that much to gain.
It's likely why she wants to go another route.
A hard night's work! Opposite the ring, a fiery fighter, an explosive one, like a Christina Leonardo 2. That's the kind of fight to where you're going to have to earn your money.
She ain't nothing to play with.
Christina, like Jessica McCaskill, she's a pressure fighter, but she's also an ambush fighter, where the pressure you see from Jessica is constant.
Punches and bunches because she don't stop coming after you.
Christina Leonardo 2 exhibits a little bit more form, and she's a little bit more explosive than Jessica McCaskill.
The base style is something akin to what you used to see from Iron Mike Tyson in his heyday.
A female version, fighting at a slight crouch, moving side to side like a metronome, closing the gap.
Big hooks, big bent arm punches. That's the kind of fighter Christina Leonardo 2 is. That's the kind of pressure that she applies. And I love the idea of Cameron versus Leonardo 2.
But the Chantel, what is she going to decide to do when the time comes?
We'll see.
In men's lightweight news, ahead of his upcoming fight early next year, opposite the ring, Hector Garcia, Gervonta Davis believes boxers use mental health as an excuse to get out of stuff.
I don't often agree with things Gervonta Davis says.
I don't often agree with things Gervonta Davis does, but in this instance, I have to agree.
I do.
You never heard a no back-in-the-day fighter talk about mental health, Davis said following his training session at Fifth Ave Gym in Miami Beach, Florida. I think boxing people is probably the most. We need mental health to actually come in the ring and fight and things like that. I think we probably the toughest out of whole combat sports, you know what I mean? I feel like as though that people just was saying that stuff to get out of stuff. Yeah, like an excuse. Because I feel as though we all, to be honest, we all have mental health issues. But I think in boxing, we control it. You know how it is? You know what I mean?
Mental health and a sound mind is more of a conversation piece these days than it was in previous eras. Not exclusive to a conversation about boxing and boxers and their mental health in a general sense.
It is a prevalent issue that has found its way into the sport as a conversation piece, and Gervonta Davis is not convinced that everybody crying about their own mental health and how it's affecting them, he's not convinced that all these individuals and all these people really are battling demons, that they are in essence misappropriating a prevalent issue because it's prevalent.
Because it's a trending issue, it's the trendy thing to do.
We all have mental health, Garcia stated in reference to Gervonta Davis's quotes. First of all, you can't even conjure up a clear sentence. I've boxed my whole life, fought over 200 times. I'd break a long time ago if I was fearful to fight. You simply have never done your research and simply have a low IQ.
For those not already aware, Gervonta Davis was referencing Ryan Garcia and perhaps some others who claim to have been battling mental health issues. And once again, Gervonta Davis is not convinced that these issues, these claims, are genuine.
There's any number of boxers these days claiming to be battling mental health issues. Tyson Fury being the most prominent among them, the mental health advocate who oftentimes seems less than genuine to me. You know, he's a contradictorian.
He's always belittling and bashing everybody else.
Always contradicting himself. He says one thing today, the exact opposite tomorrow. But is that really an indicator of a mental health issue, or is that just a guy who's full of shit?
Were you clinically diagnosed in a clinical setting as having a mental health issue? Was Ryan...
Let's make this clear that I'm addressing mental health issues as they pertain to the sport of boxing, not the greater issue as a whole, and questioning the legitimacy of these claims, as many fighters have become quite quite comfortable talking about this stuff.
Anybody from Tyson Fury to Ryan Garcia to Adrian Broner. Adrian Broner pulled out of the Omar Figueroa fight, citing mental health issues as the reason. And a lot of people bought it.
But I didn't. I didn't forget that Adrian Broner raised a hell of a stink at the press conference for what was supposed to be the Omar Figueroa fight. He raised the stink that they held the press conference not in a conventional setting, but by way of a Zoom call.
I didn't forget that he was constantly complaining about Al not giving him his money.
And I didn't forget that Eddie Hearn made two separate offers to Adrian Bronier, two separate multi-million-dollar offers to lock horns with Conor Benn. This was before Conor Benn tested positive for a banned substance. Better still, as it pertains to this conversation, I didn't forget that Eddie offered Adrian something like $2.5 million, and I thought to myself,
there's no way that Showtime is going to pay Adrian that same amount of money to box the likes of Omar Figueroa. They'd be burning money.
There's no way Showtime matches the $2.5 million that Eddie was willing to pay Adrian. So in all likelihood, he stood to make less fighting Omar than what he could have made boxing Conor.
He stood to make less. So what does he do? He pulls out of the fight. He says he's got mental health problems. He says he's got mental health issues, and everybody buys it. Everybody except for me.
Oh, I didn't buy it. I felt mental health issues weren't the reason that he pulled out of the fight. Money woes were the real reason. He wasn't happy with the money. He decided it wasn't worth his time. If there's somebody out there that's willing to offer me $2.5 million, why should I waste my time with this?
He claims he's got mental health issues. He's pulling out of the fight. Couple of months later, he pops up at Black Prime. He inks a 3-fight deal with them. Mental health issues
doesn't seem to be an issue anymore. And Adrian Broner, he seems to be in good spirits about it. Could the money he stands to make have something to do with that?
Adrian Broner, like Ryan Garcia, like Tyson Fury, claimed he's got mental health issues, but does he really?
And for argument's sake, let's say that he does. Even if he does, is that the real reason you pulled out of the Omar Figueroa fight?
The conversation piece here is whether or not some pugilists are misappropriating a prevalent issue to get out of their responsibilities.
Because that's what Gervonta Davis is saying, and I happen to agree. I think that's more or less what was going on when Adrian Broner pulled out of the Figueroa fight. When it comes to Tyson Fury, I think he uses mental health, advocating for mental health, as a marketing tool to help him seem like more of an everyman, quote-unquote everyman.
Ryan Garcia says he's got mental health issues, but who diagnosed him?
You could ask that same question about Adrian. You can ask that same question about Tyson Fury.
If you really do have some kind of mental health issue, what's the pathology report?
What's the patient history? Are you now, or have you ever been on any prescribed drugs, any medications for this mental health issue you claim to have? Have you been diagnosed by...
Who's your doctor?
Your psychologist or your psychiatrist? Dr. Google?
Dr. Pepper?
Funk Dr. Spock?
Dr. Spock? Dr. Scholes? Who's your doctor?
When you claim to have a medical issue, the inference we could make is that you sought medical attention for it in a clinical setting.
Because if you didn't seek medical attention in a clinical setting, then it couldn't have been all that big an issue.
You hurt your back, you go to a chiropractor. You hurt your butt, you go to a proctologist. You say your brain is broken, you're feeling down, you go to a psychiatrist.
You get medical attention.
That's what you do. Now, does that apply to you?
Is every pugilist in a sport that claims to have mental health issues, are they getting medical attention?
Do you believe all these guys? Because I don't.
What are we talking about? Being in a funk? What are we talking about? An anxiety attack? What are we really talking about here?
What the fuck are we talking about?
I think Gervonta Davis, at least for once, he raises a valid point.
This entire conversation piece is just another arm of the build-up for what's supposed to be Gervonta Davis's fight with Ryan Garcia in the second quarter of next year. Ryan Garcia, who added, I think Tank is just dumb and can't hold a conversation longer than 5 minutes, to which Gervonta Davis responded, you just mad I said you're juicing. The truth will always hurt, you dumb fuck. The paperwork shows it.
What paperwork?
Gervonta Davis has paperwork, essentially evidence that Ryan Garcia is juicing. Gervonta continued, nah, you're just a bitch. Plain and simple, soft-ass little white diva. To which Ryan Garcia responded, thank you for exposing yourself as a low IQ individual. You represent delusion. And the sad part is, you don't even know how dumb you are.
To which Gervonta Davis responded, eat a dick and get ready. I'm coming right at you, pussy.
And stop juicing, because I'll find out. Really. I'll show how dumb Baltimore can get. To which Ryan Garcia responded,
This is a pussy. Seriously, wake up.
Posting a screenshot detailing the alleged car crash that Gervonta Davis had and how it's reported in the collision, a pregnant woman.
It was a pregnant woman involved in the collision who claimed she saw Gervonta Davis and Gervonta Davis saw her, and he just left her there.
More egregious parts of Gervonta Davis's ongoing vehicular accident case, Ryan continued, "I'ma do this, I'ma do that. You aren't gonna do shit." To which Gervonta Davis responded, "Like I had your chain, right?"
Unless Gervonta Davis actually snatched Ryan Garcia's chain from off his neck and kept it, I don't see what this kid's bragging about.
It's all very JV, infantile, juvenile, the back and forth between them. This is intended to be build up for what's supposed to be their fight in the second quarter of next year. Gervonta Davis maintains his assertions that he believes Ryan Garcia is juicing on the premise of Ryan's musculature, in tandem with Ryan calling off his fight with...
There were preliminary reports, rumors and rumblings that Ryan would be facing Mercito Hesta, a southpaw, the same way Gervonta's a southpaw, in January. But those rumors, that fight, has since been called off. It was never made official. There was never an official announcement.
I feel like Gervonta Davis is grasping at straws, if I'm being honest. If you're so concerned with this guy using performance-enhancing drugs, you incorporate VADA testing into the contract for your fight, and
he never accused Ryan Garcia of using performance-enhancing drugs before. It's not up until they're supposed to fight each other in the near future that he starts up with this stuff.
As soon as you're supposed to fight this guy, you start up with the steroid allegations, steroid accusations, and it's not an encouraging omen.
Ryan Garcia is a taller guy than Gervonta Davis, a younger guy than Gervonta Davis. He don't turn into a butterball between fights the same way that Gervonta does. Gervonta sees the musculature on this guy. He thinks he's on something.
And maybe he is, but this is boxing. Who isn't on something?
What, are you getting cold feet? You want to call the fight off?
Are you looking for a way out? Because it sounds like it.
Showtime, as a network, as a platform, as far as their boxing programming, would take a serious hit if anything happens to this fight. You see, they already called off the Jermell Charlo versus Tim Tszyu fight on the premise that Jermell is injured. If this fight
gets called off, what other big fights can they hope to deliver in the coming year? I hate to break the news to you guys, but Plant versus Benavidez, while it's a good little fight and a solid little fight, it's really not a big fight.
Neither is Davis versus Garcia. Hector Garcia, not to be confused with Ryan Garcia.
That is not the Garcia that everybody's waiting for Gervonta Davis to share the ring with. If Showtime don't deliver this fight,
Fuck, man.
at least their boxing programming is.